Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier.
This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton.
Hi, I'm Michael O'Brien, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Hello and welcome. This is Monday Motorsport on Motorsport Radio. And my name is Lester, and we are live tonight for another couple of hours of fantastic motorsport debate and discussion and talking mostly about Formula One, to be honest. Coming up on this special show, we have live, hopefully, if it all works, we've got Will Buxton, the author of a brand new book, to tell us about exactly what he's done in the book. I'll tell you what he's done, but he can tell you more. He's interviewed 20 legends of racing, and he'll be here very shortly to discuss everything. Because we are live, you can interact with us and get involved, and maybe even put your questions to him if you like. It's at M-Sport Radio on Twitter, Motorsport Radio on the Facebook as well. We're live on motorsport.radio, the website. And coming up later in the second hour, we've got Formula One test and development driver for the Racing Point Pink Panther team. It's Nick Yellerly. He's going to be here on the show to discuss, amongst other things, his roles in Formula One, but also as a BMW Motorsport factory driver as well, which sees him leading the Chinese GT Championship at the moment. Fascinating stuff from two big names in motorsport. So, well, what have we got on the panel? Or whom have we got on tonight's panel? Well, I'll tell you. Please welcome to the show. It is Connor Jackson and Liam Hodgins. Hello, guys.
Hello, Lester. How are you?
Good evening, Lester.
I'm actually, well, since you asked, actually, I'm getting over a really bad cough, so apologies in advance if I burst out coughing. Yeah, it's one of those sort of 3-week type things where it's really annoying, and every other sentence you're not sure if you're like well, it's one of them. So apologies in advance if I do start coughing. I'll try not to, but anyway. How are you anyway?
I'm very good. It's been an interesting week for myself. Obviously, I'm going to the British GT round this weekend for the big Silverstone 500, so I'm really looking forward to that. On top of, as you say, the Formula One we've got coming up at the Canadian Grand Prix, so great to see that back in action.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about hopefully a bit later the Silverstone 500, the crown jewel, if you like, or the blue ribbon event in British GT later in the show, because it is quite large as well, and it's got a massive support category as well. Liam, what have you been up to since we last heard from you?
Quite a lot, actually. I've been filling in, trying to finish off my graded unit, which I've finally got over and done with. So all the days and all the nights have just merged into one. So that's been a bit of a shame.
Well, yeah, it's good to see you back on the show anyway, definitely. And
glad to be back.
Yes, we will hopefully, we're trying to establish contact at the moment with Mr. Will Buxton, who is, I don't know where he is, but he told me earlier on that he's out and about at some sort of event or evening or some sort of function, and we will be making contact with him very shortly to talk all about a brand new book called My Greatest Defeat. And if you've just joined us, it's not a book all about Will depicting a list of his greatest defeats in life, but it is more of a him, I don't know if it was him, transcribing 20 interviews with racing legends such as Mario Andretti, Jeff Gordon, Emerson Fittipaldi, Derek Bell, Dario Franchitti, Mika Hakkinen, Damon Hill, for example, just to name a couple of people. Niki Lauda as well. Felipe Massa, Carlos Sainz, Bobby Unser and Alex Zanardi, just to name a couple of people. Yeah, that's to ask them about their greatest defeats. That will be something that I'm sure we definitely want to hear about anyway. And we will be bringing Will on. I think he'll be having his camera on. We're doing all this via Skype as well at some point. So yeah, we actually didn't call him beforehand. What we usually do is bring guests on and just tell them to turn their camera on first of all, and then we bring them in on the show. So fingers crossed, all this works shortly, in minutes, let's say. But if you've got any questions for Will or for Nick, Yellowly a bit later on in the show. Because we are live, you can get in touch with us right now. Best way to do that, use the comments box in the comments box below, wherever you're tuned into this show. And even if we're not live, if you downloaded this as an audio podcast, let's say, then you can still get in touch with us and let us know. We do still read everything. Don't worry about that. So, Liam, yes, you have been, as you mentioned, been doing lots of stuff.
Yeah.
And what will you be doing this weekend? Anything particularly good?
I will be working all weekend, so I might catch up with the Formula 1 Grand Prix. I think I will, which will be good.
Yes, Formula 1 in Canada this weekend for I forgot what particular round it is of the championship, 8th and 9th? I can't remember. We'll ask Will. Yeah. Well, when Will gets there, he's actually nipping off to Canada, I believe early tomorrow, because he is, if you don't know, I think F1 digital presenter, and I think he was the first ever F1 digital presenter, I think. But again, we can talk about that with Will later on. British GT Championship a bit later on, and some F1 news, I suppose, to kick things off. And it's not much earth-shattering news, although saying that, I always preface this by saying, well, so far, because usually we have the effect of coming on air and going through our whatever blah 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 news that happened over the weekend, and then while we're on air during the show, there's been some massive bit of news, and it's not been included in the show. So hopefully tonight we'll be across everything. If news breaks, our trusted journalists, Connor and Liam, will be all over it, in theory. But anyway, I've just been having a quick scan of the biggest sort of news, and, Christian Horner has come out, I think today or yesterday, over the weekend anyway, and he's said regarding the proposed rule changes that things will be looking very, very different when they're actually brought in. I think one of his quotes says, I'm sure something is going to be presented. It will probably be nowhere near what's actually gets signed. I'm sure that the regulations will change and evolve. Something will come out in June, says Christian. It will change in September, October, and probably November. Basically, yeah, he's got no hope of ever getting the whatever exciting things are due to be proposed, and we'll probably end up this time next year. Thoughts on that, Liam?
The news come to me right away. It's a bit of a shame, because it'd be great for us to get some totally different cars, unique racing cars, unique Formula 1 cars that don't really get sort of done over by the airflow from the cars in front of them. So when you're behind them, then it'd be great if the cars could follow, they could race cleanly, they could race together. But we've been hearing a lot of this over the last year or two. The manufacturers just get involved, the teams get involved, and they're getting too much involved with the decision process of the 2021 regulations. It's a bit of a shame, because I think what Formula 1 should be doing is telling the teams that, there you go, there's our regulations. If you don't like it, then you know where the door is. So they should absolutely be doing that, because I think for the fans, the racing hasn't been good since the racing has been good to points, but the closeness has really been affected since 2017, when the new aero rules were brought in to make the cars a lot faster. Drivers struggled to follow, so it's a shame, because we just want to hear big, loud engines, fast racing cars, drivers pushing to the limit constantly, and seeing the best drivers come out on top and have wheel-to-wheel racing.
Well, it's something I think that MotoGP did in 2011 or something, or 2012, to bring in the current set of current era of regulations, and they did exactly as Dorna, owners of promoters of MotoGP, did exactly that. They basically said, look, here are some rules, guys. If you don't like them, then maybe this isn't the championship for you. Something particularly that I don't think that we'll ever hear the FIA or Liberty ever propose, Connor, such a draconian set of regulations, whatever they may be, to people like Ferrari or Mercedes.
Yes, as you say, how dare the governing body governed the teams, because that would be
or their championship, yeah.
That would be totally nonsensical. But no, Ferrari, by the sounds of it, say they're going to maintain their veto over certain rules and regulations, which they've had for decades now. But whether this will be more of the same detriment to the championship, or that's not the whole root of the issue, is obviously yet to be seen. What we would like to see, and obviously Liam's pointed out already, is very much a change of establishment, or at least a more open establishment at the front. At the minute, the racing is very static. Obviously, Monaco is a terrible example of that's because it's Monaco. But even if you go back to this Spanish Grand Prix before that, it was very hard for drivers to get close to each other and overtake, even at circuits where they've got less data, say China. Overtaking here was done only through hindered systems like DRS, and drivers up at the front, especially the midfield was a lot closer, but up at the front, the pack spread between the top six. And we've talked about this many times before, but ultimately it is a case of the way that the car is developed in the future for these 2021 regulations is going to have to be changed, and this sort of domination at the front is what's led many of the big drivers, Lewis Hamilton especially, to be very content in his situation. I know Hamilton himself, talk about F1 News, was saying today he could go for 5 more years in F1. Obviously, I'm not suggesting Hamilton is certainly any close to retirement, but a driver to have already picked up 4 world championships, 5 world championships, and close to his 6th. For someone like him to say that he can just keep going forever and ever, because there's no
because it's easy, basically. That's what
there's no physical limitations on the cars that would stop him from racing at an older age, which I think is something we have seen a more relax of in recent years, with people like Schumacher going into his 40s after his second comeback.
Well, he didn't find that easy when he did come back, but do we dare call that a slightly different era, the Schumacher second era? Really, I don't know if it was, but hey ho. Yeah, so anyway, before we stray dangerously close into the territory of what F1 needs to do now and the problem with F1, because we did go on a positivity rant a couple of weeks ago on the last show, and basically, as much as it was difficult for our other F1 journalist, Nigel Chew, to grit his teeth and say positive things about F1, well, we did it. We did a full half hour somehow of saying what's good about F1, literally, and we came up. It was a bit of a struggle, I admit, but we did come up with a list of things that were pretty good about Formula One, and you can go back and, if you like, disagree. With the video of that is still up on our website, motorsport.radio, and go and check that out right now. But yeah, I am just cautious to not get in the problem with sort of Formula One type thing. Oh, what have I done now? I've called. Okay, I know what I've done here. I've done a Skype thing, basically. Yes, this is Monday Motorsport on Motorsport Radio. Hello and good evening. I seem to have, in my haste of calling Will Buxton, I might have accidentally cut off the other guys there. So Liam and Connor hopefully will be back with us very shortly. And by magic they are already back, and I'm already making mistakes in my cough sweet induced somewhat drugged up, lemsipped to the eyeballs state. So apologies, that's my first one tonight. But Will wasn't available, by the way. Just thought I'd let you know that. So yes, Connor, we were, as I say, straying almost dangerously close to talking about what is wrong with Formula One at the moment. But we're not going to do that. Instead, we are going to, given that we've got an F1 presenter on later on, hopefully, if we can definitely get him on. Will Buxton will be here, hopefully. Instead, we're going to continue that trend, really, and Williams are looking quite positive at the moment. Claire Williams, and now I don't know how much of this is spin and PR, because hey, they need it, and they need to do it. But they've said that they're hoping to bring some upgrades to the car, which has been by far the worst. And they're looking a lot more positive, and they're saying that maybe it can be a bit better, Liam.
Yeah, it's a story that I've actually been keeping an eye on quite a lot recently.
Okay.
And if you look back at Spain, then George Russell qualified a couple of tenths off of the back of the next car, which I think was Lance Stroll, and it was their closest gap to the front of the pack through Q1, which was great for Williams. And George Russell finished 15th in Monaco, a track that I can't remember the last time Williams actually had a good race, or if they had a good race, they weren't exactly very fast at the circuit. So, and it's a track that Williams has struggled with, especially over the turbo hybrid era. There was a point in the race where George Russell actually thought that he was on to scoring points, which is amazing to think. Robert Kubica was actually showing quite well over the Monaco weekend. He is very strong at Monaco. Unfortunately, got spun out at one point during the race, which was a bit of a shame. But nonetheless, Williams do look like they're potentially getting on top of the struggles that have affected the start of their season, which would be great if they could sort that out, especially if it comes to the second half of the season, because not only will it affect this year's car, but they also need to get on top of these issues to move on to next year's car, because if they don't do that, then next year will just be another write-off season, and then 2021 will be around the corner before we know it, and if they don't get on top of the troubles, then they won't really know where to go for 2021. So fingers crossed the legends of Williams can sort it out soon.
If you believe certain scurrilous stories and rumours floating around the internets and various parts of the paddock, Connor, Williams might not even be around in 2021, as much as Claire Williams might bite your head off for even suggesting it.
I wouldn't go that far. I can certainly list some gripes with Williams, but I certainly wouldn't think full, complete pulling out of F1 would be the option. I do believe they are going to be focusing on the 2020 car, as Liam said. It is, I think, even those very deeply inside the team have to admit that there's going to be nothing to get from this year. There's going to be nothing they can achieve realistically. They might be able to close the gap, and the potential of a lucky point towards the end of the season is up for grabs maybe, but I certainly don't think they'll be anywhere near moving up from bottom of the championship. Saying that with Monaco, they did have good improvements, but I don't believe these improvements were entirely down to the Williams team. Monaco has a great aspect of bringing a lot of the teams closer together, notably the slower teams, because teams in Williams' situation often struggle with acceleration out of the corners. They often struggle with top line speed, which is something that Monaco isn't punishing as much as, say, the big long straights that we had in Spain where they finished 2 laps down. We've seen this before, actually, when Jules Bianchi scored his 2 points for Marussia. Marussia were way off the pace in pretty much every other Grand Prix, but they had the cornering speed of the midfield teams, and they benefited massively during the Monaco weekend, to the point where Bianchi managed to weave his car into a very successful position, as we know, to get obviously those 2 points. Marussia's only 2 points. But if we're talking about Marussia, that season was after a torrid year the previous time, where they knew they wouldn't be mixing it with the top teams, and so spent an entire year sort of developing the car, working with new manufacturers, building new relationships. So for that 2014 season, I'm going to say it is, they managed to build a car that was competitive, and they did even finish in front of Sauber in the constructors title in the end, even though that they almost finished in front of Sauber. That was it, because Felipe Nasser ended up scoring 2 points in the Brazilian Grand Prix later that year. Anyway, slightly off topic, don't worry about that. I'm just trying to think of all my F1 knowledge. But the point was, they were competitive with Sauber at that point. After being so much at the back of the grid, they weren't even considered as competitors to points. Within a season, they managed to work up to at least a midfield level where they were respected enough. And I think Williams need to do the same. This is not going to be their year. They might not even score any points. I'm actually pretty happy to say from this point on, now they haven't scored points in Monaco, they will not be scoring points for the rest of the season. I'm probably going to get bitten in the backside when we go to Shanghai. That's the only exception I can think of right now. But Williams do need to focus on next year, but they need to build these technical relationships, these technical partnerships, and that difference, I think, is what's going to be the real issue when it comes to moving Williams up the grid. Is not how good their engineers are, but how good their technical partners can be. Because
they did make a big deal, and rightly so, because at the beginning, when it was a new partnership with Mercedes, then things were looking, pretty good, and they were, fighting for podiums regularly back a long time ago now. They're maybe not capitalising on the best performance that engine has. Go on.
It's clearly not an engine issue. As you say, they're using the same Mercedes output that Mercedes themselves are using, and obviously Racing Point and a lot of the other and one of the other midfield teams as well. It's clearly an engine that is not hindering them in any way. This isn't like the McLaren Honda situation where McLaren can just blame Honda for everything and say that's their fault. Yeah. Williams are more exposed to the extent of they need to look at themselves more in the mirror, and perhaps the fact that they are more in the spotlight of they know they need to improve, unlike McLaren, who perhaps could have hidden themselves slightly better. Williams will use that as an incentive to perhaps rejiggle the internal structure of the team, perhaps bring in some new blood, some new technical engineers. But we'll see.
I think you make a really good point there, Connor. Could bring in some new blood. I think Williams at this situation, since they're so far off the pace, why don't they go for some young blood where they can bring in some new technical aspects, some forward thinking, something innovative for the team to nurture that young talent, the engineering talent, not only the young driver talent, but that would work so well for the team because, to be fair...
Not necessarily.
It could be. It could work in both ways. You could have a couple of people that are older that have been around the block a few times, but bringing in and nurturing talent is always a good thing. And why not? Why not do it when you're at the back of the grid and see what this new technical team can do for the future?
Well, potentially, I'm just thinking with I don't know, if I was managing that team and I was in the position where Williams find themselves in, unfortunately, at the moment, I'd be thinking, well, do I throw out all my experienced guys just because the car's not performing, and or do I stick with the guys who probably know better than anybody how to fix the car for next year? This year, as you say, Connor, is probably a write-off for them. But for next year, do I stick with my trusted and somewhat knowledgeable designers and aero team and that sort of thing? Or maybe do I go with a completely untested set of guys and potentially screw up next year as well?
Can't be any worse than this year, could it? So why not? It's sometimes it's better to try something that's not really tried and tested before. The older staff could maybe watch over the younger staff, but you never know. Sometimes the older people would just be so stuck in the ways that they think that would work, but not actually try something that would be so left field that could actually work. So some teams in the past have done this, where they bring in some new young staff and have come up with something absolutely amazing that can beat the best. So I think it'd be something for Williams to at least try, or maybe at least think about, because at this point they've got nothing to lose, really.
They do have those connections, by the way. I should point out to the young engineering talent. They have a heavy hand, I know, in the Young Engineers Award that that's presented at the end of the year, and the F1 in Schools initiative. They also have a lot of funding that goes into that, if I'm correct in saying. So they should have the access, really, to the best engineers that the UK has to offer. Whether they obviously need foreign talent is up to them. But I see what you're saying, Lester, about the throwing out the experienced guys, is you don't want to take the, say, the Ferrari approach of, if it doesn't go well for 2 years, scrap the whole lot, we'll bring in a whole new different set of people, and we'll just keep doing that every 2 years until something sticks, which in Ferrari's case arguably has or hasn't done in the last 10.
Well,
so we'll see.
It is an interesting one. If you maybe have any, if you're tuned in right now and you've got any solutions to whatever it is that we've decided are Williams' problems, I think they know better than whatever else we could say. But any suggestions? I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. Young Engineer of the Year and all that. But yeah, let us know. And we'll, I don't know, pass your comments on. It will be not well received, I'm sure. But yeah, we do want to hear from you regardless, though. As to the proposed rule changes, whatever they may be, and whatever they might end up. Actually, interesting question. You can get in touch with us and let us know, what do you think will be the final watered down, probably will be, final watered down versions of the exciting proposed rule changes that always seem to come around, and there's going to be 20 new teams on the grid, and blah blah blah, yada yada yada, same teams as last year, and various other things, and yeah, go on, Connor.
No, I was gonna jump in and say bigger cars, because that's the only thing you could ever seem to confirm with F1 is every year bigger cars.
Yes. Bigger.
Bigger is always better.
It'll be so big that it'll be just a train around Monaco with no chance of overtaking.
Possibly. They may even be as big as the Formula E cars, potentially. Who knows? Which are so big they struggle to get round parts of Monaco, as we know from just watching it. Anyway, so this is Monday Motorsport. It is Motorsport Radio. Hello and welcome. We've got Liam Hodgins and Connor Jackson here, and we are patiently trying to get Will Buxton on the blower via Skype to ask him about his brand new book called My Greatest Defeat, and maybe our greatest defeat might be tonight, trying to get Will Buxton on the show. We'll chart that up. We're not giving in, though. Certainly not. But just to keep talking about the brand new, released, I think, this week or last week. So it is literally brand new. And I can tell you, kids, that it is already #1 on Amazon UK in motorsport, in the motorsport category. The #1 best-selling motorsport book on Amazon UK, and I think worldwide it's top 10. And I think,
wow.
So I did remember seeing a tweet about 2 weeks ago saying it had reached the top sort of 100 in the UK. So top 10, I would be very. I wouldn't be that surprised if it's
not overall. I will check, but I mean when I had a quick look before we came on air, it was, and I checked in the motorsport category. A bit of a niche, admittedly, where I think one of the books is a children's book inside the top 3, I think, and I forgot the name of it. But anyway, but Will Buxton's, just before we came on air, My Greatest Defeat is the title of it, and it is #1 on Amazon UK in the motorsport section, and we'll put a link up on the motorsport.radio website to tell you exactly how and where you can grab your copy and find out maybe if it is narrated, because I always like a good narrated book. Connor, not about you.
Indeed, I'll be honest, I haven't taken up narrated books as of yet. I've always just taken the normal paperback,
the old-fashioned way. Yeah,
the old-fashioned way. I'm very old-fashioned, as you know, Lester. All your newfangled technologies always confuse me. How dare you?
But I mean, Liam looks like he's about to narrate an audiobook. Maybe something about Jim Clark, if that's not too.
How did you know? I was thinking Jim Clark, Jackie Stewart as well. Maybe Dario Franchitti. We'll get all the Scottish drivers on, and I'll narrate something about them.
Well, they were two of the people who Will Buxton interviewed exclusively for his new book, My Greatest Defeat, #1 on the Amazon Motorsport section right now.
I know, I saw that. Will Buxton beat me to it.
Yeah, so that would be interesting. And I've been thinking of actual questions that we can sort of put to him, which I suppose I will save for when he's actually here, because we're not giving up on this. We're going to get him on the show. Do not worry about that. We talked a bit about Williams, I suppose, and we've decided it's kind of almost futile for them. I think it was the general consensus. Reading between the lines, I know nobody said it, but We're thinking it.
Yeah.
And also,
There's always hope for the future.
way to go! There you go. Nice bit of positivity. It's sinking in eventually. The Red Bull team boss Christian Horner is not hopeful about the proposed rule changes, whatever they may be, whether they will actually filter through to become the final version. But let us know what you think, because we're live right now. You can interact with us on the show. It's at Sport Radio on the Twitter. It's Motorsport Radio on Facebook, and we're also on Twitch as well. Don't forget Twitch, we're also there. We do dabble a little bit on the YouTubes, only a little bit though, and also, most importantly, on our website, motorsport.radio. My name is Lester, and I am about to die coughing very shortly. I've had a terrible cough, and I was really ill a couple of weeks, and that's basically why we couldn't do the show, because I couldn't even speak. I was like, hello, welcome. So basically, yeah, we called that one off. You know what it's like anyway. So, go on, Liam.
No chance of you taking over the Ferrari drive that's apparently going in?
Well, no one's actually said it. I think it was just a lot of people getting a bit overexcited about someone's disappointment versus wanting a little bit of silly season to start a bit earlier this season. And that's how potentially the rumour of Charles Leclerc potentially walking out of Ferrari came about, if you didn't know. I never heard that one. I heard that apparently Vettel's retiring at the end of the season. Oh, yeah, that was the other one.
Alonso might be coming back. Yeah,
of course. Yeah, everything's Alonso. All the drivers are going to get thrown out, and it's just going to be the Alonso World Championship. Oh, sorry, I mean WEC. Oh, sorry, I mean, no, Alonso World Championship. His team in Formula Renault aren't doing too well either at the moment, are they, Connor?
Not.
I'm sure they'll get an awful lot better. It is a rookie season for them, after all. Talking of Alonso, is what Liam was saying, though. It is nice to see him back in the spotlight for again another week, because I was so disappointed with Alonso not being in the spotlight for an entire 8 days, I think it was, after the Indy 500.
Don't forget there'll be all the Alonso merchandise too, the Alonso branded car as well. I'm just making these up now. But I'm sure, McLaren, in a last-ditch attempt to eke out any last bit of profit on, former race drivers, will bring out an Alonso-branded car or something or whatever.
It'll be 80% off,
and it'll be I can see a scenario, providing that he's fit and healthy to do so, in his 40s, mid-40s or whatever. Alonso will still be briefing some of his media press fans, who all seem to go crazy over him, saying, well, yes, I could return next year, I'm talking to, I've got some good options, blah, blah, blah. That's my Alonso impression. And then there'll be, columns printed, and then blogs posted, and then there'll be whole rumour things. And nobody seems to actually just think with their brain. This man has had all his chances, and he's blown most of them. He's not coming back, ever. Mind you, I said that about Kubica.
I don't know.
Leicester, never rule out. Never rule them out. I know what you mean. You've always been the biggest
skeptic.
Let's say opponent. Let's say to Alonso's return, but he's not the first F1 driver to have always touted himself back into an F1 drive. I remember reading the F1 racing magazines back in the day, and there was always stories about Rubens Barrichello coming back long after the 2011 season.
As I said earlier, it's usually because you've got one journalist who's a massive fan secretly of this one particular driver, or maybe a handful of journalists working in one publication, Senna, and you always hear and see constant articles about the same driver, Senna, popping up years after he's been relevant, Senna.
Wow. No comments on what you're going to say. I'll let Liam speak in a second.
It's basically what you just said. But yeah, sorry, continue your thing. You were talking about journalists. Being very careful. I don't even know if Will Buxton, by the way, is a massive Alonso fan, and I'm going to hope after that little tirade he's not. Otherwise, he definitely won't when you come on. Anyway.
Oh dear. But no, most journalists are usually, level about these things. What's usually the biggest sort of promotion is the drivers themselves, or the drivers' PR, and I'm sure we can have words with Alonso's PR. And in the same way, I'm sure we could have had words with Barrichello's PR 6 years ago about, what's all this about you possibly returning into your 40s? You might still have a one-off drive. Like Nigel Mansell, I wouldn't be surprised if we suddenly see Alonso random replacement for one Grand Prix because Sainz got injured or something. Not that we'd obviously wish anything like that upon him.
I know what you mean. Yeah, he could be a...
But he could be a good sort of replacement driver. But saying that, he's always there just to stoke the headlights more than anything. And circling this all the way back to Vettel, I think it's just a case of Vettel is starting to be a bit under pressure now from a young teammate, and he's realised that unlike Hamilton, who seems to be sort of just maturing as he gets older,
what else is he going to do?
Vettel appears to have reached his peak quite early in his career, which perhaps is understandable. He broke a lot of records for being the youngest to do everything. So perhaps a driver who peaked very early is going to fade off would be understandable. And maybe I can pass this over to Liam, but if a driver who has a lot of success early in his career peaks early, what's your opinions on Max Verstappen?
I think Max Verstappen's going to go all the way up until his 50s and still break records. I saw a quote from Daniel Ricciardo that came out today or yesterday, and it basically said Vettel is still a badass, but Verstappen is better. So I didn't get to read the article.
Who was that? What was that quote? Do you know?
Daniel Ricciardo said it on one of the publications. I didn't get to read the article. I was sort of skimming through things when I was sort of finding work. I was sort of procrastinating from college work. But yeah, talking about Vettel, if you look through the races this season, he hasn't really looked very happy. He's sort of looked content about where he is, and he knows that Charles Leclerc is posing an ever greater threat with every passing Grand Prix. I know Ferrari and Leclerc are making a few mistakes, and Vettel's still picking up the points. But at the same time, he just doesn't look particularly happy. A bit like 2014 when Daniel Ricciardo was running rings around him at Red Bull. So maybe he's not enjoying it as much. Maybe he might hang up his helmet at the end of the season. I don't think he will. I see him doing it at the end of 2020 instead. But maybe after being beaten by Hamilton the last couple of seasons, and I've got to remember it's nearly been a year since Vettel last won a Grand Prix, so it might just all be building up and he might not be enjoying himself. So we could possibly be seeing him considering retirement at the end of the year. And then obviously Alonso has maybe picked up on this, or someone in his PR circle has, and gone, oh, Alonso's talking to Ferrari, so yeah, we better get him back in the headlines. But
I highly doubt it. I'd be willing to actually put money on the fact that Alonso won't be returning to Ferrari. As I said earlier, been there, done it, and he failed to win it.
Yeah. One of the rumours that has come out of the Monaco Grand Prix about a driver replacing another driver has been Nico Hülkenberg possibly replacing Pierre Gasly at Red Bull next season, which I like Hülkenberg because I think it would be nice to see him at least get a car that is worthy of his talent, to see what he can do with it. But then again, like Pierre Gasly, and I would like to see him get another season. So we don't know. It could just all be the rumour mill. Probably is. The silly season needs to be kicked off at some point, and these are the rumours that have all come out of Monaco. We could see.
I would like to, not that it's the most, not that I'm going to say anything about news sources, but one particular publication has
Motorsport.
Has printed a headline this evening. Liam, while you're on that subject, rumours of Hülkenberg joining Red Bull are total rubbish.
Okay.
Well, who was it? What was the source? Who said it?
I found an article from WTF1, but I'm going to see if they link back to anyone in a minute. You'll have to come back to me on that.
Yes.
He says literally searching through Google for news.
Okay. No, I was just wondering how credible it might have been on first appearances. But yeah, apparently, Liam, your thing is rubbish, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't think it was really anyway. I just thought I heard about it.
Making it up, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, if you've never heard of any of Liam's predictions, by the way, have you ever predicted anything that's been right? Because
I think I predicted a Lewis Hamilton win. The last time I was on the show.
That's not that difficult. But
that's like saying the casino's always going to win. But at the weekend, I think, just before the MotoGP race, I think we in the Motorsport Radio team chat that we have in our office, and I think Liam predicted that Marc Marquez was going to do really well this weekend, and
well, I mean, he got second place. He was a 10th off the win. If that straight was a little bit longer, he would have slipped past Danilo Petrucci. He would have been a winner. So,
on relation to menus, by the way, it was told to auto build the German web newspaper, I believe, and Dr. Marco shut it down, saying these rumours are far fetched.
Well, he's always a reliable source of.
I don't want to comment on them anymore. They're absolute nonsense, is what he said.
I mean, if Dr. Marco says it, then it's probably the opposite. It's probably So there you go. You can read into that. Hulkenberg back to where did you say, Ferrari or something?
Red Bull.
Whatever. To be honest, Hulkenberg, he's one of them drivers who, again, was very, very good 10 years ago. Had his chances almost. I think he got. He had like 2 pole positions. I think, did he?
Just the one.
It's Brazil.
Interlagos 2010.
And he messed it up. Hulkenberg.
I mean, it's not his fault. He was in a Williams that was never going to...
Yeah, nothing's anybody's fault.
But he was in a Williams that was never going to be as quick as the Ferrari, the Red Bull, or the McLaren.
Except it was on pole position.
But that's because he managed to get pole position in a damp session.
Oh, yeah, so of course.
Yeah, he was smart, and he played the strategy right and got pole position, but when it was dry in the race, then he had no chance.
I'm hearing excuses.
I will give Hulkenberg excuses. I will back him up.
Oh, yeah, no, the reason he didn't win the championship is it's not because he wasn't the best. It was because everybody consecutively kept beating him, and that's wrong. God. How dare they?
The reason that...
Basically, Alonso's excuse. Yeah.
The reason Alonso's not world champion is because there was 15 other cars in the grid that were faster.
No, it's literally McLaren's excuse when they were slagging Honda off was, no, it's not our car, you see, that's underperforming. It's a component in our car which is called the engine, and it just happens to be at that time Honda, and it had nothing to do with our car. It had everything to do with their car. It did. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, we could. I suppose we could write our own book about moronic motorsport excuses. I suppose. And ludicrous things to go wrong, and also fans' fantasies champions. Who would have won the championship if it wasn't for XYZ, for example? We maybe should do something like that.
Autosport sometimes do this at the end of the season where they get rid of the top 3 teams, completely get rid of them, and award points to the drivers next in the championship through certain races. And it's quite interesting to see who comes out on top. I think Sergio Perez would be a 2-time world champion by now. Nico Hulkenberg would be a champion. Roman Grosjean at one point as well. Kimi Räikkönen would be like a 5-time world champion by now or something like that.
100%.
Yeah, you do see those fans sometimes also show off these lists, and you see them on sort of Facebook groups and stuff like that. And as you say, I think it was after Monaco, someone posted a championship list, and basically the top 5 drivers were from 5 different teams, and they were all split by what would have been 10 points. And I was like, that would have been a fantastic championship. It would have been like 4 or 5 different winners from the 7 Grand Prix we've had so far. But it's all fantasy, and we've been doing it. Even if you look back on the Autosport forums, we've been doing it since 2001. When people said what would the championship have looked like if Schumacher hadn't been there, and it was just Coulthard winning by 30 points, which back in those days was a milestone. So it was always a case of everyone's always tried to take out, right, if so-and-so didn't win it, or if so-and-so wasn't at the top. We've been doing it for 20 years now. And
it's never stopped us before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think basically what they say is just take out the top 3 teams in Formula 1 would be great.
Well, that's not how winning works, I'm afraid. It's not. I mean,
there's me hoping it was.
Then you start getting into reverse grid races, and then saying, "Well, the guy who qualified 8th is anyway."
Don't reverse grid races. That is something I'd love to see. If it's like a two race weekend, sort of a sprint race with reverse grids, and then you have the main Grand Prix on the Sunday, but a reverse grid racing, Lewis Hamilton start at the back, that'd be great to watch.
He sometimes does start, well, not this season, but in previous seasons, he has started way out of position for various reasons. And he has come through to win. And they still weren't that entertaining. Sorry, you were saying, Connor?
Well, I was going to say I never like the idea of splitting 2 Grand Prix in a weekend. It ruins the whole idea of...
It's not pure enough. It's not pure.
It ruins the idea of a Grand Prix, but I'm open for shortening a Grand Prix. MotoGP and Formula E have definitely proven that the Grand Prix doesn't need to be an hour and a half to 2 hours long to make it entertaining. Even if it's just an hour session, if you can get the sort of the fuel and the tyres right, that works very successfully.
What about a 2.5 hour Grand Prix?
So an endurance race?
No. By every other motorsport category standards, that would be an endurance race. But F1 standards, it would be longer than it currently is, but not double length. So
you're just extending the non-action out for even longer. That just sounds like a tennis match right now.
Yeah, I don't agree that would work.
Well, think about it this way. Everything is perfected to within a microscopic level in terms of perfection, right? Everything across the board. And you almost rarely see things go spectacularly wrong to the same degree that it did 15 years ago, for example. And by throwing a spanner in the technical regulations to make and stress components and parts, I would say, if I was making a new rule, I'd say, guys, you're not allowed to... You basically got to keep the same specifications as it is now, all the engines and power units, powertrains and stuff, but they've got to run an extra hour. I think we'd see a lot more failures, a lot more unpredictability, a lot more DNFs, and maybe some brand new winners.
Well, sorry, I'll make a quick point, Liam. I'll let you take over. It's fine. But we've seen this technically already with this season, where we've tried to reduce it to 4 engines. We've had it before; they reduced it to 6 engines from 8, and we've always reduced the amount of engines. What happens is towards the end of the year, teams just take penalties for whichever race they're doing their 5th opponent for. And
but the penalties would be in the race itself, though, because if an engine fails because it's designed to only do, say, an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes, and it's doing 2.5 hours, then there's more chance of components and parts failing, which is exciting for us.
Yeah, but the top teams will just build more engines anyway, so they'll always win anyway.
Not necessarily. I mean...
So go on, Liam, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say that potentially Formula One should, for example, give Mercedes and Ferrari and Red Bull 3 engines per season, right? The way it is right now. But allow the teams that haven't won races a sort of concession. Basically what MotoGP have done for the last few years, given Suzuki, Aprilia, KTM, and at one point Ducati the chance of more testing and more engines and using higher revs, which means that they had a chance of developing an engine and the bike to compete with Honda and Yamaha at the time, who were completely dominating. And over the years, it has worked. It's brought the manufacturers closer together. The racing is a lot better. There's more competitive bikes, more competitive riders. But if Formula One want to really make the racing closer, then that is an avenue that they should really consider going down. Say, for example, letting Renault or Haas or Racing Point Force India do a bit more testing in season and have more engines per season as well. Instead of having 3, they have 6, which means that they would get to rev it higher, push it harder as well, while Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes, who have won races recently, have got to restrict it a little bit.
Interesting. Connor, are we stone faces to Liam's potentially valid point? Do we not think it's a goer?
Actually, I'll grit my teeth and say, that's an interesting proposition. One I haven't looked at too much, which is the idea is, as you say, giving different people different components. We've talked a lot about in the past about testing bans and a lot of monetary bans. That's also the big thing, which is cost caps. There's there is a bit, but there isn't really cost caps in Formula One for pretty much most of the manufacturers, which is why we see effectively Honda, Ferrari and Mercedes spending as much money as they can to be at the front with their main teams, and then giving the secondary teams their engines. Renault, of course, being a notable exception to this, but but even Renault give their top team a lot more money than, say, Racing Point get. So the manufacturers are going to spend big, but unless you can encourage 10 manufacturers to run 10 teams and all try to outcost each other, which does not work. I think we do need to finally start seeing some cost caps, or we just accept it for what it is and say, well, they're spending the most money, so they're making the best technology.
Yeah, very good point. Cost caps are something that would really benefit the smaller teams, and of course an equal distribution of prize money as well, instead of it all going to the top teams that have just obviously they've done the best, so they deserve the prizes, but winning a championship is the greatest prize of all.
Yes, so, how dare you get the most money for winning?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't watch NFL or anything like that, or the American series, but it doesn't really matter who wins. They get obviously the trophy for winning, but I read into it, and they've got equal prize money all across the board, which is great, because that means whoever won it one season might not win it next, and it gives us a team that are maybe sixth in the league a chance to win it next season. So it's something that I know Liberty Media would be scared of taking everything off Ferrari and everything off Mercedes and Red Bull, so it wouldn't happen. But a more equal distribution of prize money would be so much more beneficial to the sport, the health of the series. Because talking about Williams, for example, being so far off the pace and potentially being in trouble of dropping out of Formula One because, one, they're not performing, two, they're losing, they don't have money to compete anymore, which is just a shame and a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I can see that. I suppose then Liberty Media do need to decide then, do they value the manufacturers, or do they value, value is a bad word, but do they think the role of the manufacturers is greater, or the Formula One's marketable image? Because if it's the brand of Formula One that they think is the strongest, then they should have the freedom to do what they want to the manufacturers and go, well, if you don't like it, just leave. Someone else will take your place. Ooh. This is Formula One. Or do you say the manufacturers have more power or more understanding of what's good for the sport, in which case maybe you should start looking at making deals with other manufacturers and scraping away entirety of what Formula One means on a technical level or a sport level. I know we talked about double races and reverse grids and all that, and just put all of their bargaining chips into bargaining different manufacturers into the sport. But I think Formula One is a bit, you need to focus on getting more manufacturers and destroying the sport, or you need to focus on the idea that Formula One as a brand will always be here and manufacturers will come and go, even Ferrari.
Yeah, completely agree. I, for one, wouldn't miss Ferrari, if I'm honest with you. I think possibly the route of going down the manufacturers leaving, because, for example, Mercedes aren't going to be there forever. They'll leave once they've done winning and potential to focus on Formula E. Ferrari might do the same. I don't think they will, since they've been there since the start. But an avenue that would be good for Formula One would be, instead of having manufacturers building the cars and having a race team, maybe just having them as engine manufacturers and having those engine manufacturers supply race teams. For example, Aston Martin supplying Red Bull, Renault supplying McLaren, Honda supplying Toro Rosso. That would work. It keeps the manufacturers from having such a big input on the technical regulations. And it's a great point you make, Connor. Liberty Media / Formula One need to really think about what they are. What avenue do they want to go down? Do they want to go down an entertainment side or more of a business side? I think they want to go down the entertainment side, but I think they're getting swayed towards the business side with the manufacturers pulling them that way, and them having such an influence on the technical regulations. The manufacturers should never be bigger than the sports, and at this moment in time, they kind of are.
Yes. Ultimately, many people would say and agree that Formula One is first and foremost, as BTCC Supremo Alan Gow would always say, it is entertainment first, and everything else. And maybe, just maybe, and maybe this is probably a fantastic debate for another day, maybe Formula One should be more like the BTCC, and that's where we have to cut that conversation off. I've just heard the internet explode at such a ludicrous suggestion. How dare I? This is Monday Motorsport. It's Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester. Connor Jackson and Liam Hodgins are both here. And next, we will be talking to F1 test driver, BMW Motorsport Works driver, Nick Yellerly. He'll be on the show in just a moment to tell us about his surprise return back into the F1 fold, and basically we're going to quiz him about what he's playing at and what he's up to next. That is next.
Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier. This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton.
Hello, my name is Tiffany Dale, and this is Motorsport Radio on television. I don't understand that at all.
Yes, you're quite right there, Mr. Tiffany Dell. My name's Lester. And yes, currently on a Monday night we are live. This is Monday Motorsport, and I am struggling through a horrendous cough, which I've rested my vocal cords for a good week or so. But as soon as I piped up tonight, I thought, hey up, here we go. And yeah, so currently struggling through tonight's programme. Don't worry though, I'll try not to cough all down the microphone. I know it's kind of annoying, isn't it? But anyway, so we will continue talking about the single-seater series, mostly known as Formula One. Or will it be known as something else in the future? Probably always F1, but should it be, as a previous suggestion said by some lunatic called Lester Forbes, more like the BTCC in the future? Who knows? Or maybe something slightly more pure might happen, and it just take a couple of cues from I don't know, something like the Chinese touring car or Chinese GT championship, which our next person on the show, Nick Yellerly, has been racing in, amongst other things. Hello, good evening, Nick.
Hello, how are you doing?
Yes, actually worked this time. Sorry. Yes, we've been having a couple of Skype issues, but yes, we're fantastic to have you on, albeit by a phone. So we'll have to listen to what you're saying and not, because it's all visual radio now. Everyone's a content creator, Nick. So good to have you back on Motorsport Radio, and welcome to Monday Motorsport. So yeah, you've been quite busy. Starting off first of all, I suppose with your most recent news, because we've just been talking about Formula One. You've been announced as a test driver again, and still continuing your role as a development driver with Racing Point. Tell us how that came about.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working for the old Force India and now new Racing Point since I was in single seaters. So in 2014, I started actually doing some of the work on the simulator and some of the development work simulator-wise, and then for the car as well. And that's sort of I've kept my job there ever since. So yeah, I've been there a while now. Obviously, I tested the car back in 2015 before this year, and then currently still doing all the work for them now, and got to jump back in the car this year in Barcelona in May, and that was a pretty mega experience as well.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, we're just watching pictures of you in another Formula One car from a few years ago in the old Nigel Mansell Williams that you had a little blast around Silverstone a couple of years ago. That was, It is good to see you back out doing some professional racing, and it's not just the F1 stuff that you've been involved in as well, because as we mentioned, you're heavily involved in your GT racing now, and you are the BMW Motorsport factory driver as well, and you do so much, to be fair, Nick, at the moment. You do. So tell us how that came about. Wasn't it? Didn't you get invited to a DTM test in the winter? Is that how they decided?
Yeah, I mean, I actually first contacted them back in 2012, if I'm honest, when I was doing World Series. I know hassling them for a DTM drive back then, but there was simply no space and not the opportunity available. And then I switched over to GTs in 2016, 17, doing the Porsche Carrera Cup in Germany, which went pretty well. I finished second in 2017, and then I moved to Super Cup in 2018. And finished second again in that championship in my first year, and won Monaco and Hockenheim, which are nice races to win, especially when you're racing for a German manufacturer. And during that year, I actually got a call back from BMW to do a test and a couple of races for Team Rover in Blankfan, which went well. And that led on to doing the DTM Young Drivers Test at the end, although I'm not that young anymore. I did the test at the end of last year in the car, went very well. And the relationship sort of went on from there, and they signed me to be a factory driver for this year, racing out in China as a full program, and then doing the Nordschleife stuff as well, as a couple more other events that will get announced during the rest of the season.
As you say, the VLN series, as most people know it as, and you had. Did you most recently win the last race, or you've had a win over there this season? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, we won the 6-hour qualification race, so the quali race for the 24-hour race that's coming up in 2 or 3 weeks. Sorry, so that was a nice. My first race actually with Walking Earth Motorsport, and my second actually in a GT3 car around that circuit. So it was a pretty nice way to sort of start my GT3 career around such an awesome track. And obviously we're in relatively good shape come the 24 hours in a few weeks, and hopefully we can try and run at the front and see where we end up after the 24 hours.
Now, I'm sure perhaps to your current employers, BMW Motorsport, as their factory driver, it might be causing them maybe a couple of frustrations in the PR department, that most of the headlines about you at the moment, Nick, seem to be getting written because you were most recently out in a Formula One car. But it is definitely GTs and the BMW program that you're focused on. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Force India, or Racing Point, I should say, thing.
We still call it that as well, don't we?
Yeah, everyone seems to, even Kimi Raikkonen in Monaco, I heard his radio. So, I've been doing that for a long time, and that was part of the deal, that I was able to concentrate and still do that alongside my GT commitments. But no, I'm fully focused on the factory role at BMW, and that's where I see my career being and remaining for a long time. So I love the GT racing as well. Don't get me wrong, driving a Formula One car in Barcelona was a real great experience, and they're so fast nowadays. So to actually jump back in after not driven something that fast for a long time was a bit of a shock to the system. But actually, lap time wise, we were very, very competitive after the first morning, and then I had to jump back in the GT car at the end of the week for the Nürburgring. So sort of learned how to switch in between the two quite quickly, and both parties are happy with me doing both, so that makes my life a lot easier.
And we are too, to be honest, Nick. Because I'm someone who's always sort of followed your career ever since I've been doing motorsport and media and podcasts and that sort of thing, and since your very early GP3 sort of career. So I've been stalking you for a few
2011.
years. Yeah, basically. Nick, we've got a couple of other journalists on tonight's show. We've got Liam Hodgins and Connor Jackson as well. And if you don't mind, being grilled by them as well, because I'm sure they've got some good questions. Liam?
No worries.
Hi, Nick. Nice to meet you, buddy.
Hi, yes.
Hi. Nice to meet you. Right, so you've been all over the place the last couple of seasons from different categories. I was wondering, are you planning getting back into single-seaters, possibly, with BMW and Formula E?
I mean, if the opportunity came about, I would definitely not turn my nose up at Formula E. You know, I think the racing's great. I've raced with a lot of the guys that have been, successful in it competitively before with single-seaters. So, you never know what's going to happen. I haven't had any talks at all with BMW about Formula E, but if the opportunity came about, then for sure I'd jump at it. It would be interesting for me to see how the technology worked, and very interesting to race it and see what it was all about. So I would definitely be up for it, put it that way.
Sounds amazing. How tough is it going from a single-seater racing car like the Racing Points Force India and Formula One back to the GT? What's the adaptability like?
Yeah, I think if you're not used to it, it's very difficult. When I first started doing a lot of the sim work and then having to jump back in a Porsche Carrera Cup car, for example, I found it a bit tricky for the first couple of times because, the lap times, I think at Barcelona, for example, in 2018 in Super Cup, I did a 1 minute 49. And then this year when I was in the F1 car, I did a 1:18.2. So you're talking, a well over half a minute difference per lap. So the driving styles, you sort of have to have two completely separate brains, separate ways of going about everything. But now, after, like I said, a couple of times of doing it, I managed to be able to adapt pretty quick. And it takes a couple of laps in each car to reacclimatise to either way. But now it's not the end of the world to switch between them.
Did you find yourself in a GT car trying to brake where the Formula One car would brake?
No. Luckily, reference points are a big thing, and I always err on the side of caution, particularly when jumping back into a GT car, because, jumping back into anything after you've been in the current F1 car feels, super slow and very lazy and whatnot. So I always err on the side of caution and build my way up. But it's funny, like on a track like the Nordschleife, where there's a lot of high speed stuff. Actually, I was particularly good through there because everything felt super, super slow compared to what I'd been used to during the week leading up to the last race. So it actually helped more than anything, just to slow everything down in a high speed and, crack on with it.
Nice one. I think I'll hand you over to Connor because I know he's got a couple of things he'd like to ask you.
Yep, no problem.
Indeed, Nick. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Fantastic. Obviously, you've moved with BMW this year, and it's obviously a great new opportunity. I'm sure this year is a time of new beginnings, as it were. But for a lot of your fans, a lot of people who have followed you, you're obviously well known for your time in Porsche Super Cup, and obviously the other Porsche series. And most notably, obviously, you were vice champion last year, actually. So it's great to have seen you risen to the top of that stage. But Porsche Super Cup obviously is on the Formula One bill, so you're very much exposed to these Formula One cars all the time. There must be talkings going on, not just with you and Racing Point, but you and some of the other F1 teams, because they must see your work out on track when they're not busy with their lunch break.
Yeah, well, I know I have people that I know in other F1 teams, so obviously they do watch and congratulate me if I do well, or say, good luck for the next one if I'm not so competitive. Luckily, last year we were pretty competitive all through the championship. We were in the top 5 in every race, which was nice. But to be honest with you, my alliances stay firmly with Racing Point. They were very good to me in giving me the opportunity back in 2014, and I've stayed there ever since. So to be honest with you, it's mostly with Racing Point, but obviously I do have people that I know in the other teams, whether they be mechanics that ran me in Junior Formula, GP3, World Series, or a bit of GP2, or engineers that I've met when I had been testing Formula One. As I'm sure you know, motorsport's a really, really small world, so everyone seems to know everyone, and particularly when things are going well, the attention is on you.
That makes sense. Also, you talk about keeping alliances, but with the move to BMW this year, I assume some alliances have been broken. I'm not sure of the details, but I can't imagine BMW would be that happy with you going back to Porsche Super Cup anytime soon.
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, particularly the big German manufacturers are always in competition with each other. BMW have been very good to me to be happy with me doing and continuing the Racing Point work. But yeah, I don't really mind that they wouldn't be happy with that, because it shows that they are keen to keep me on, and I'm keen to stay. So yeah, BMW gave me a massive opportunity to become a factory driver, which is what I'd aimed at since, particularly since going across from single seaters to GTs. And yeah, I'd really like to stay there as long as I can, to be honest.
Well, as you say, you've still got a number of years ahead of you. You're 28, I believe, at the minute. So you're definitely in the prime of your life when it comes to racing, as it were. But going from the Porsche Super Cups, obviously the Chinese GT that you've been doing this year, and some of the Blancpain races here and there, I can imagine there must be some sort of big goal we're aiming towards here. I can't imagine you running around in Chinese GT 3-4 years from now.
Well, you never know. I really enjoy the racing out there. The team that I'm racing with at the moment is Team AAI, and they won the Age and Le Mans series at the end of last year. I think with Jesse Krohn, one of the other factory drivers, driving for them, and we're leading the championship currently. So definitely, I wouldn't mind if I was racing the championship out there. But my aims are clearly to win the big endurance races now. So 24 hours of Nürburgring, 24 hours of Spa, obviously Daytona, or Le Mans, all races that I want to win. With the current news that BMW aren't running the M8, that might be a bit difficult for the next couple of years, but you never know what happens in the future. And obviously those big races are on my list to win. So that will be the aim.
No World Endurance Championship just yet then?
No, not just yet. That's not in the plans. Obviously, Intercontinental GT is a big part, and the customer racing side of BMW is growing from strength to strength. I think with some really good results already shown this year. So, my heart is with the GT side. Anyway, I just love the racing, love how close you can get, love how competitive it is. And yeah, for now, like I say, I'm pretty focused on that.
Lovely. I'll hand you back to the others for the end. But thank you very much for speaking, Nick.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Nick, just before we let you go, just wanted to just had a couple of questions just to ask you, and it was more about curiosity, to be honest, because I suppose all these all fans think similar things. I like to think anyway. I'm not the only one who thinks all these weird things. But you have been, as you said, with the Racing Point team now, as it is, since 2014, and you've been heavily involved, I believe, with their sim and development. How close currently, because I think you've had the benefit of being in their current sim currently and tested their current car. How close are the two in terms of performance? How fast can you go in a sim on one particular track? Or did you actually do a sim run and then go out on track in the test? And did you sort of compare the two, and how similar are they?
Yeah, well, to be honest, the main reason for the test was to get me back in a current Formula One car, as I hadn't driven the latest big aero, big tyre spec, to get me back up to speed, obviously see what my performance was, and then to correlate between real life and the simulator, because the closer we can get the simulator, obviously then developing new parts, developing all sorts, and making the race weekend smoother for the race drivers will just become better and better. So that was the reason for doing it. It's definitely helped. And also the simulator already is not far away. All the buttons, switches, the way stuff like diff mapping and everything we can control from one to the other. And the feeling wise is very, very similar. The way the car reacts is very good. So yeah, super happy with already where we are with the simulator. But now I have driven the real car. I have no doubts we'll be able to make an even bigger step moving forward.
So I guess you have the ability to offer bits of insight for the current drivers, and Perez in the top 10 in the World Championship at the moment. I wouldn't say unbelievable, because the team have always done quite well, given their budget.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're able to sort of offer them an extra insight to say, well, look, guys, I've done this at this time, and I find actually if you just keep your foot in for an extra, half a tenth or whatever it is that you feed back to them, that bits of information, I mean, I don't even know how feedback works. To be honest, I've never done it. So
Yeah. So I mean, we can speak to them. Obviously, Sergio and Lance both know how to drive. They're not in Formula One for no reason. So I don't really need to tell them what I'm doing driving wise, unless there's something, a huge difference. It's more in direction of setup. We can use the simulator as an extended FP1 or an FP2. So the stuff that they don't get through within those sessions, we can then continue the work during the day, into the night, overnight, before qualifying. Obviously, once you go into qualifying, the cars are set the same, and I don't think they are then changed from that point into the race. But up until that point, we can be developing and suggesting different ways or directions to go with the car to make them more comfortable. So it literally is an extended test session. It's the best way to explain it. So when they finish and they do their debriefs, we can listen in, see what they are wanting from the car, and test a load of other things in between the sessions that they can then either choose to put on or not, depending on, there's so many variables. But that's sort of how it works.
So I didn't actually realise. I mean, obviously, I knew that there was a lot of hard work going on at the base at Silverstone. But as you said, then sometimes you're into like the late hours of the night, early morning, just constantly going around doing laps and making suggestions and doing little tweaks just for the setup of a free practice. Later on.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, you can be until obviously when the stuff is earlier in their development, there's even more work. So when you're getting to know the car, you can definitely be working in, depending on time zones again as well. So you want to be doing it when they are doing it at the track. So if it's Japan, for example, you'll start at 2 a.m. and finish at 2 p.m. Or if they're in Australia, you'll start super early. Texas, obviously, you'll be in late at night because they start a lot later than your days. And yeah, it's hard work, but obviously everyone's working super hard at Silverstone at Racing Point to get the best results, and everyone knuckles down and gets the job done.
Yeah. Well, you've told us already about your focus and what you aim to be doing next. I understand that and I think you teased a little bit of a future announcement, which I might have otherwise missed, I think. But is there anything else that you can give us about what else maybe you might be doing in the future?
Well, I mean, I'm doing the 24-hour race, obviously, with BMW in 2 or 3 weeks' time. So that's the biggest news, I would say, coming up. Is that what you meant, or is there other things that have been? Well,
I don't know. I mean, talking to you over the past few years, Nick, there always seems to be something else that you're sort of like working on in the background, and then we come away from an interview, and then like it's all over Autosport. Nick Yellerly to race in Formula One or something. I'm like, oh, damn, why didn't you mention that?
No. So for now, it's concentrating on the 24-hour race.
Okay.
Actually. In 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'll finish that race. And then on the Monday or the Tuesday, I fly straight to Shanghai for the next China GT round. So it starts getting busy again. And yeah, to be honest, that's the biggest point of what's going on. And then working my way up to the top of the BMW ranks is also obviously an aim of mine. Coming in the first year of GTs, it's a great challenge, and yeah, let's see where it takes us. Maybe I can find myself in a DTM seat in the near future. That would be cool with the new cars. But like I said, super happy in GTs and with the opportunity they gave me. So for now, just focusing on that.
Okay, and just finally, I think before just finally again, how much influence would you say that you have over the whoever it is makes the decisions at BMW Motorsport? If you really wanted to, really wanted to do like Formula E, for example, but maybe the bosses said they want you to maybe do another season of Chinese GT or whatever, could you maybe just say, well, actually, maybe I think my I might be better suited given my, years of experience in, Formula One and stuff?
I mean, I can suggest that, I'm sure, but I'm not at the end of the day, I'm not the guy that makes decisions. They're my employees, my employer, sorry. So they make the decisions of where I go, and I go and race and do everything to the best of my ability, wherever that may be. The China GT and out in Asia is actually something that I was really quite keen on doing once it was offered, just because I'd never raced I'd never raced in Malaysia, which was the first round. Shanghai's next. I'd never been there and really experienced the culture.
Some good names in that championship at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Adam Christodoulou.
Yeah.
Super driver. Obviously, he's won the 24 Hours of Nürburgring. He's a factory driver. He's top notch. And I mean, he's very, very, very good driver. Then there's Jasman Jafar as well.
Yeah.
Who is also very, very good. Again, I raced him in World Series Renault. That was 2012 now. I raced him. So, a while ago. But, some really quite good drivers. And also working with the AMs is a new dynamic as well, of the other Pro-Am format. And that's a good new dynamic for me to work with the AM drivers and try and bring them on. And the competition seems to be, good. I mean, having to try and hustle around some of the tracks, beating Adam and Jasman is definitely keeps me on my toes, and it's good that we're all out there fighting for the top positions all the time. Keeps it interesting.
Definitely a name that's almost like a blast from the past, really. Old Jasman Jafar, and as you mentioned, he was big back in his day, and probably still is, actually. Not to be too disrespectful about his talents, but excellent. Nick, we will let you go and prepare for your big race coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and we will definitely keep up to date with whatever else it is that you pop up doing in the near future, no doubt. So thank you.
Brilliant.
For coming on Motorsport Radio again, and here again on this here Monday show of ours.
No problem. Good to speak to you all, and I'll catch you sometime soon.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Nick Yallowlee. This is Monday Motorsport on Motorsport Radio. Hello and welcome. My name is Lester. And we're still talking, amazingly, don't know how we do it, but we're still going on about various racing series, mostly Formula One. We'll try for the final time to get Will Buxton on the show. His book, ironically, is called My Greatest Defeat. Ironically, it's also our greatest defeat if we don't get him on the show. And we'll try again next.
Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier. This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton. Hi, I'm Michael O'Brien, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Loads of comments. Thank you very much. If you are still tuned in live online, this is Monday Motorsport. My name is Lester, and we do this usually every single Monday. I say usually just because it's depending on what we're doing. Maybe we're doing a live event over the weekend, and maybe we need to rest or whatever. We do lots of different things, including this weekend as well. We will be out providing some live streaming of a brand new event. I'll tell you more about that maybe later in the show. Usually it's Monday Motorsport, sometimes on a Tuesday, but it was fantastic. I thought, Connor, and Liam, to have Nick on the show, telling us what it's like in the life of a Chinese GT Championship leading driver, and also VLN race winner, and also BMW factory motorsport driver, and also current F1 test driver, Nick Yallowlee.
Yes, Lester, as you say, very varied career from our British talent, as it were, Nick. Nick's obviously someone who, as you say, you've been following since GP3. I've been following since GP3. He's come around the block. He's come around the block from single seaters to had a few rounds in the Toka package, I believe, a couple of years back with the Porsche Carrera Cup.
Oh yeah.
And he's done obviously international Porsche driving for a number of years now, and we imagined that was going to be his career, but after reaching the very top echelons with Porsche Super Cup, finishing runner-up in that championship, it was only by a couple of points. Actually, it was a very close fight at the end of the year between Michael Ammermuller, the eventual champion himself, and Thomas Preining, the young Austrian. There was only about 8 points, I believe. He's just trying to count in his head. And there's only about 8 points between Ammermuller and Yellerly at the end of the season. So it was all very tight up until the final Grand Prix. So he's clearly one of the top Porsche drivers, and he wanted a new challenge, and he's talked a lot about this BMW deal that he's doing. I'm very intrigued to hear about him being sort of very excited about the Chinese championship. I would have thought he'd have very lofty aspirations as a driver who's been on the F1 package effectively for the last year, but perhaps that's just him being a mild-mannered guy, and he's happy to accept the racing in whatever form it comes in. But I should say he's got a number of top drivers in that championship, and hopefully we can see him doing something major in terms of BMW in the near future. He seemed very reluctant to say anything about World Endurance, but I'm sure in the next 5 years, I'm sure something like that will be on his radar.
Yeah, I was trying to potentially get out of him any more bits of information because, as I say, he is, I won't say necessarily, well, he's, what's the right word for it? Sometimes a bit elusive about big news that he's got up his sleeve. And
aren't all racing drivers?
Well, yeah. I suppose all the best media trained ones, certainly. But yeah, I mean, when you've got someone like Nick Yellerly, BMW Motorsport's factory driver, the Racing Point F1 test and development driver, VLN race driver and race winner, Chinese GT, and also possible DTM future driver as well, possible. It wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility if I suggested, well, what else are you doing, Nick? And then his reply was, I don't know what you mean, I'm not doing anything. Well, nothing's announced anyway. And then you find out later down the line that actually he's been talking to, McLaren or something for a drive in F1 or something. Oh, but he could even take over Alonso's. No.
Oh, I knew you'd find a way.
Maybe not. But yeah, I mean, a talented, such a talent like Nick Yellerly, he seemingly does have lots of things up his sleeve. He's a very busy driver and a talented one at that. So yeah, we'll be catching up with him at the probably just after the 24 hours of the Nürburgring, which is, did he say in 2 weeks' time?
Shortly, yes.
3 weeks, I think it was.
In a few weeks, yeah, good. All right then, so yes, we have tried once again to get Will Buxton on the show, to no avail, unfortunately. Don't know where he is or what he's doing. I'm guessing he's in a place with no internet signal or no phone signal either. But that is my greatest defeat for tonight's show. No, seriously though. Yeah, Will Buxton. I will put his link to his book on the website motorsport.radio. Check it out, so you can actually get a very good discount at the moment. How much? Check it out on the website. That's what's called a tease, folks. But yeah, basically, I was going to ask him loads of different questions. I've got like paper and stuff, and I've been dead professional and being like, oh, so yes, Mr. Buxton, I see here in 1985 you did this and blah blah blah. Yes. But yeah, no, I was going to ask him obviously about some of the big names, maybe touch upon his interview with Niki Lauda, his interview that he's got in that book at the moment, and interestingly, he doesn't talk mostly about his racing defeats, mostly his, and I've not yet read his book, so I'm not going to try and quote it, but just to paraphrase stuff what Nicky says in Will Buxton's book, is that his biggest defeat, I suppose, his biggest reflection would be when his plane crashed and ended up causing a lot of deaths for him. That's what he talks about in Will Buxton's book. And I suppose it's made even more poignant now, reading things from Niki Lauda, considering he has recently passed away, and all of the F1 community still, I suppose, reeling, really, as well as fans. And it would have been nice to hear from Will, I suppose, to hear exactly maybe what he got out of people like Sir Jackie Stewart as well. I would definitely love to read. Maybe next time you should do an audiobook. Because I'd love to listen to that. Just because I'm a listening guy. But yeah, Sir Jackie Stewart also got interviewed especially for this book, as did Alain Prost as well, and Sebastian Loeb, Tom Christensen, Damon Hill as well, and Emerson Fittipaldi, Mario Andretti, Derek Bell, Dario Franchitti, Mika Hakkinen. Not one for many words, being a Finn, but he reveals his greatest defeat. I don't know what it was. Maybe you should read the book and find out. Carlos Sainz Sr., Bobby Unser, I'm presuming Sr., Bobby Unser and Alex Zanardi and Ari Vatanen as well. It sounds like a fantastic book. And it's 20 of the greatest living mostly living racing drivers, as it says in the blurb about the book, from IndyCar, NASCAR, Le Mans and rallying. And all the interviews were conducted especially for this book. By all accounts, Connor, does sound like a brilliant book.
Indeed, as you say, it's a good reflection from an F1 journalist who's obviously been around for 20 years now. Will Buxton, he's very experienced. He's done a lot of work, obviously, over in America with NBCSN and the Speed Channel in previous years, and so he's someone who's very well respected in the F1 paddock. We've obviously talked about the fact he's F1's first digital presenter on their, I believe, their F1 Live streams, not available in the UK, but he is obviously someone who will be an interesting person to talk to, and I'm sure a lot of these drivers open up. From my experience as someone who's talked to a lot of drivers in the paddock, the answers you get when they've just walked off the podium and you've stuck a microphone in their face is an awful lot different than the answers you get when you walk into them in the back of the garage and they're just milling their time around waiting for the next session. The contrast of when drivers open up to you can often be a very intriguing and interesting view into their lives, and I imagine it's what Will's done. I imagine it's what Will's done with this book, where he's got drivers in a very personal state of mind to sort of not just talk about them on a professional interview level, but talk about them and their personal lives, because that sort of opening up is what's
it's a proper skill.
Is often what's very intriguing for a lot of the people reading these sorts of books, to genuinely hear the thoughts of the people and not just the PR trained media spin that I'm sure they'll give at the end of every Grand Prix.
Very true. And any thoughts on the initial Liam? Any thoughts about the from the book, about what we've said? It does sound like a good book.
It sounds like a really good book. Will Buxton has been one of my, I would say, sort of heroes of recent years, because I admired the way that he covered the GP3 and GP2 broadcasts on Sky Sports many years ago. I thought it was incredible. As Connor pointed out, sticking a microphone in the faces of the drivers as they are on the podium, he'd done that after both races, and you got a great representation of what the drivers' feelings were like, their emotion, their adrenaline. And to touch up on what Connor said once again, he is a very well-respected pundit presenter within the paddock, and he seems to sort of come across as a very genuine. What you see on camera seems to be what Will Buxton would be like in real life, and I think that's why the drivers warm to him, because he's not one of these PR, I'm just out for a really good story type journalists. He's there to talk to you and he will get a story from you, but they won't have like a PR spin on it to sell. It does seem genuine. Headlines. It does seem genuine, and I think that's why he is very well respected. That's why he can get drivers to open up to him. And I think that for the likes of Dario Franchitti would be great to listen to. Mika Hakkinen, wow, that would be something. That's a story within itself. You could probably sell a complete book on the life of Mika Hakkinen. I would be interested to hear what Ari Vatanen would have to say, because I remember I got the chance to interview him at a festival up here in Scotland many years ago. And I was with him for 10 minutes, and it was great. He was very funny, but a man of very few words. But that would be something that'd be great to read within Will Buxton's book. And yeah, I was looking forward to really getting to talk to him and just sort of delve deep into what the book is about. But it's something that I am definitely going to be picking up.
Since you mentioned it, I just remembered that I also interviewed Ari Vatanen. He made I'm guessing it might have been his last appearance at the Autosport show in 2015, I think 2016, and I wasn't expecting him. I was there for I think anyone who's there in a media journalistic capacity, as there seems to be many more of the like each and every year. You're there sort of ultra focused and not really there. You sort of separate the enjoyment side of the, going as a fan, and you sort of, I do anyway, and I wasn't entirely focused, and then I turned around basically, and there's Ari Vatanen. I'm like, oh, okay, can we, okay, we're doing an interview now. Literally, I mean, I didn't have time to process the fact that, do you know what I mean? I was there sort of interviewing him, and words were coming out, and I have no idea to this day what the hell I said, because I had no time to prepare, literally like 2 seconds. But I think someone took my picture of me interviewing Ari Vatanen with a microphone in the face, and I have no idea what the hell I said to him.
I was something a little bit similar there. You ask him a couple of questions and he's a man of few words, but if you ask him something that he really wants to talk about, he goes on for ages, and it's great. This is completely off topic, but I've just done a quick Google search of Ari Vatanen, and his main thing that popped up for him was he's a politician. So not a former racing driver, not a world champion, politician. So I thought that was
Are you sure it's the same Ari?
Yes, definitely is. He tried to.
That it's the same Ari.
Yeah, no, because he did apply, or I think he put in a bid just before Jean Todt became the FIA president. He was considering, or he either was considering or put in a bid for himself to become the FIA president. And I think he's quite big in Finland in as you say, Liam, politics now. So I remember, yeah, it's all coming back to me now. We were talking about his son, Max Vatanen, because he was dabbling in WRC at that time as well. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, going back to Will Buxton and his book, My Greatest Defeat, available now. #1 bestseller in motorsport on Amazon UK, by the way. Check it out. Link on our website, motorsport.radio. I would have asked him, by the way, for the people who, I mean, I'm sure he might have had like a massive list of people who didn't make the list, for example. Who did he really, really want to interview, but for various reasons they weren't in the paddock, or they didn't have the time, or he couldn't make it, or something like that. Because surely he didn't just have the 20 interviews. I'm guessing here, just guessing, that he probably had more interviews, a couple up his sleeve maybe.
That was the big question I wanted to ask him as well. Yeah. Was who was the big one that got away that you didn't get to interview that you really wanted to speak to? So maybe one day we'll get a chance to ask him that question.
Maybe, who knows? And also, hello to Charlie Andrews as well, who sent in a question for Will on our live chat. It seemed like a good question, but unfortunately, we're going to blame Skype for the reasons he couldn't come on. We thought he might have been on, but then he didn't connect properly. So Skype, God. Tonight's show was brought to you by Skype. Great. Yes, literally had like whole pages of questions just to ask him. But I suppose, Connor, since you're the next best thing to Will Buxton, we'll ask you. Just to put you on the spot, because I know you love that.
Oh, thank you.
Connor Jackson, eye roller in chief of Motorsport Radio. That's his internal working name. Anyway, what was we of the people? Yeah, because you mentioned just a moment ago you have also interviewed quite a few people, albeit for written journalism and stuff, and not maybe to NBCSN. But who would you say, Connor Jackson, would be the most fascinating, most interesting person? Not necessarily like the biggest name, who we'd all know, but for you, so far in your career, who would be the most fascinating, most enjoyable person you've interviewed and spoke to?
Right. There's a number of ways I can answer this question. and I'm sure there's plenty of people I've completely blanked out of my mind right now. You'll often find, I won't name particular names, but there are a lot of drivers out of the major spotlight in the national series, i.e. drivers that don't compete in either the TOCA series or in straight up British GT.
Yeah, F4.
Well, not necessarily those as well, but just a small touring car series. You'll be amazed how honestly those drivers can get. I remember a sit-down interview I had with Jerome de Sadelier, brother of a fellow de Sadelier that's now racing in the World Endurance Championship, I believe. Liam, if you could fact-check me on what his brother's name is, I do apologise. He was fascinating because he was racing radicals, and it was so interesting to talk about sort of his life and his racing career with his brother and how he'd helped him. Because these sort of drivers, they don't get the media attention that the big guys get, and so it was a very personal one-to-one conversation. I have that also with some of the Formula Ford guys I've interviewed in the past. They're very personal. In terms of jokiness, you mentioned about that. I will always remember Callan O'Keefe. He always had a laugh no matter what interview it was, and even when he was sort of down in the dumps, there was always some sort of spark of glimmer. Mostly a spark of glimmer. And I'm sure you've had various run-ins with Callan, but he was mostly a great lad to have around the paddock, and it was a fantastic to always run into him. So there's probably plenty of people I've forgotten. There's
I didn't need a big list. I was just literally from your point of view, who was or who has been the most fascinating person you've interviewed, and quite often it's not always the big headline names. It's someone who, like you say, is someone that most people have never heard of.
It very is, because they have the story to tell that they've never told, and you'll very often find that the big names don't have a story to tell because they've already told the story. But you ask those who've never said anything, and they'll speak for England.
Wise words from Connor Jackson. I was also going to ask Will whether he maybe thinks, I don't expect him to ever sort of answer it, but maybe if he thinks that drivers nowadays are just a bit too media polished. Knowing that the answer is yes. I would have asked him that.
Well, they are media polished. It's whether they're too media polished, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Ricciardo is the exception because he...
Would you call Raikkonen an exception?
That's a good one, because I've heard that Kimi is very different outside the paddock compared to what he's like inside the paddock, where he's very quiet and just doesn't really speak to anyone. But outside the paddock, he's a chatterbox and very funny guy.
Well, so his guard's down. He's not on. He's not working as such. But for that reason, I would say Ricciardo would be a lot more media friendly. Maybe that's a better term to put it. Versus Raikkonen, and he only gets the reputation that he does for, one, being fast, and two, being slightly awkward in interviews, which is a typical Finn characteristic mostly. I'm generalising, but it really is. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't give the media that much value, really, if you were going to interview. You might come up with a few honest things, and you might swear now and again, and we might all go, no, Raikkonen, legend. But yeah, generally speaking, I think Ricciardo, in terms, if we were ranking drivers in terms of like media, I don't know.
I would say Max Verstappen is up there as well. He's very outspoken about how he feels. He doesn't. There's a bit of PR spin polish on him, but not too much that you go, you know what, I really feel like he's not telling us the truth, but when he's angry, he's angry, which is good.
Oh yeah.
I want more people to be like that.
Yeah, because I think when you're angry, I think that it's a bit like being drunk. I think your most honest reflection of who you are, just maybe for a split second, less so probably when you're angry, but I think more than when you're sort of drunk anyway. It genuinely comes out. The mask of media perfection sort of slips a little bit, and we get to see the mentality of the driver behind the media mask, in a sense. Something that Nico Rosberg said, I think, in a interview, and I forget exactly where he said it. It might have been on the F1 podcast or somewhere else anyway. Nico Rosberg went through in lots of detail about how he was able to mentally defeat Lewis Hamilton in 2016, and that was a big part of the reason, also, he thought, why he ended up winning the championship, but only just. It was in part because he was able to play the mind games that he learnt so well, working so closely with Michael Schumacher, for example. He employed some of Schumacher's tactics, some of his dirty tactics, for example, like I think in this general quote that he said, which I forgot where the hell it was from, actually. I think it was from the F1 podcast. But anyway, Michael Schumacher would usually always sort of go to the toilet a few minutes before, say, a qualifying session, and then dive straight into his car and then go out. And he'd usually keep everybody waiting. Nico Rosberg did basically the same thing to Lewis Hamilton, having learned that tactic from Michael Schumacher. Knew that Lewis wanted a wee or something just before quali, stayed in the toilet. Basically, he knew that Lewis would have been getting a bit frustrated, and these are just the tiny little psychological things. If someone sort of pisses you off by staying in the toilet a few extra minutes, that's going to kind of upset your qualifying session a little tiny bit. And over the course of a season, if you do that enough times, you can definitely get the edge, the psychological edge over someone by employing those little devices.
In that case, may I suggest a question for future pros, which is, if Hamilton had been around at the same time as Schumacher, would Schumacher have defeated him psychologically, if not on track?
Well,
may have defeated him with a big dirty turd.
Okay.
I can see me making that into a meme. Anyway, but I think I already know the answer to the question, though, Connor. Schumacher would have defeated Lewis Hamilton if they were both of a similar age and similar, say, if they were both in the same team, let's say, because Lewis Hamilton isn't that mentally strong. And you can tell by the way he's always whinging and whining.
Yeah, he's very fast, incredibly talented, but the mental side of it is never been a strong point. For example, 2016, when it was Nico Rosberg versus Lewis Hamilton, every time his car broke down, he was screaming that there was sabotage within the team.
Yeah, he had like a victim complex going on, didn't he? And
remember, go back to 2011, him always crashing with Felipe Massa and him always having these outbursts to the media. He's not mentally strong as much as some other drivers are in today's paddock, and of course Michael Schumacher, who was just like steel at times. Yeah, so
I think Lewis has grown since 2016, especially because even if we take the last Monaco race, and I pointed this out to some of you guys, but after the last Monaco race, with all of his complaining about tyres, with all of his, you put me on the wrong set, the whinging and whining, as you say, that we expect from Lewis, at the end of the race, when he was interviewed, and they asked, and they were asking him, were you thinking about pitting? His immediate response was, no, I wasn't thinking about pitting. So what was the point of the arguing? What was the point of the whinging, if not to be a psychological game to Max? Because he can't hear that directly, but Horner and his team principal would have heard that over this radio stream. They would have been telling Max, all right, he's getting cocky, he's getting frustrated, push him, to the extent where Hamilton knows where Max can push him early in the race, on that tyre set, so that later in that tyre set, he only knew where to push on the track, which was outside Rascasse, down the tunnel and into the chicane. And if he got Max there, that was all that mattered. The rest of the track, he couldn't overtake. And Hamilton, I think, has grown a lot mentally, to the point where his whinging and whining he does on the radio is now psychological. He's using it as a psychological barrier against his opponents because they think he's still weak from a pre-2016 mindset. Yeah,
maybe, possibly.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up. I just feel like his team, for example, Andrew Shovlin, wouldn't have known that that's what Hamilton was playing at. So they were probably going, does he want to pit? Should we pit him? But as you say, Hamilton would have learned also from 2015 when he did pit under a safety car and he came back into third place and lost the Monaco Grand Prix for that. So he's learned from it. And you make a very good point. And there's a lot of people saying it was psychological that he was playing against a game against the rest of the field. I'm swinging more towards that side, believing that he's done that as well, because even if he was struggling with tyres, there's no chance he was going to pit and come back in fifth spot on a track you can never overtake on. So it was always better for him to push the tyres to the very end, even if they were falling to bits in the last lap.
It's definitely an interesting one, and it's a discussion, a wider discussion, based on the brand new book by Will Buxton called My Greatest Defeat. It's available right now. It is the #1 bestseller in motorsport on Amazon UK at the moment. I think it's like in the top 10 on Amazon.com, like all over the world. So in the motorsport category, anyway. Yeah, Will Buxton. We'll put a link to the discounted price on our website, motorsport.radio. Grab yourself a copy, give it a good read, because by all accounts, the accounts are quite fascinating in this book, and that's all I've got to say about that. And maybe we'll get Will on at a future time when it's #1 best-selling book of all time in the motorsport category. Maybe, who knows? But there are some good publications. Will Buxton, My Greatest Defeat, his first ever book, I understand. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, as opposed to a lot of other... that was another question I was going to ask him. As opposed to a lot of other types of books where it's sort of glorifying people's success, biography type books, that sort of thing. Whereas this is a lot more the sort of book that if I was ever an author, I'd sort of write. I want to know about people when it goes wrong. I want to hear their mentality, about how they coped in their darkest moments, which is exactly what this book seems to be all about. Fantastic stuff. Well done to Will, and it was a shame that we couldn't get him on the show for various technical reasons, but we will endeavour to keep trying for future shows. Thank you very much for people who've sent in questions for Will, including Charlie Andrews as well. Yeah, we were defeated by Skype, unfortunately. Skype. Anyway, we will move on and talk briefly about other motorsport. Yes, it is other motorsport happening this weekend, because this action happening at Silverstone this weekend. The Silverstone 500. Connor, what is the Silverstone 500?
Well, Lester, as you say so abruptly, Silverstone 500 this weekend for the third different round, but weekend, but it's the fifth round, I believe, of the British GT Championship. It's the Blue Ribbon headline event for the series. So a 3-hour long endurance race for the British GT Championship. It's always a fascinating race for them. Obviously, it's very interesting this year. We've got, as always, a big full grid, 42 different cars overall, I believe, with a 42 car entry with a record amount of GT4s, I believe we have. So it's the largest overall entry since this Silverstone race in 2013. Very often we get a lot of Continental GT cars come over, and as is the case this time, as always, we'll of course have the big manufacturers, McLaren, Mercedes, Aston Martin, and Lamborghini will be there, and of course the championship does continue with that. Talking of Lamborghini, they are leading the championship at the minute with Barwell Motorsport. It's a interesting dynamic at the front between the Adam Balland, Phil Keane team and the Sam Dehaan, Johnny Cocker team, because both of them are starting to pull away now slightly in the championship, and it is coming down to which Aston Martin can drag the gap back in, basically. GT4s is an awful lot closer, and it's becoming a bit of a competition at the minute between the HHC and the Tolman Motorsport teams.
Oh, yeah.
The two of them are very close at the minute. Both of them run two different cars. Both of them run two McLarens as well, so it's a McLaren domination in GT4. However, the one exception to that is the Ford Mustang, the new Ford. Well, it's not a new Ford, but the new entry for this year.
It's new to us.
The new to us, exactly. The Multimatic Motorsport team has been very successful over qualifying and the one-lap pace, claiming the two of the pole positions so far. But race pace has been a little lacking, so hopefully we can finally see them get back to form on what will be the biggest weekend of the GT ladder. Because of course, this weekend you've not only got Silverstone, but after this you go into the Donington round, and after that you go into the Spa round. So you've got the three biggest rounds of the GT calendar in quick succession coming up in the next 5-6 weeks. So this really is the start of a big key time for all of these teams, and it will be a fantastic spectacle on what is the full Silverstone GP layout that obviously still has tickets available for those wishing to go down.
Woo! Check it out, yes. Head over, because the supercars, they've got something called a Supercar Sunday on Sunday, and I was there last year, and I believe the year before I was there anyway, and wow, they have a lot of supercars. And when they say it's Supercar Sunday, I mean the paddock is usually packed full of amazing, beautiful supercars anyway. But when the British GT Championship say they have a Supercar Sunday, this is like ludicrously. This is like a ludicrous amount of other supercars. It's basically like all the other supercars in the country have all descended on Silverstone and are there in one of the massive paddocks, basically. So.
Yes, I do remember, as you say, last year they brought it up for the Sunday in the close car park behind one of the food areas. And yes, as you say, I could not move during the middle of the day on Sunday when I was trying to hop back and forth between paddocks, just because of how many people were crammed in to watch, to look at what was a good 100, I think it was over 100 at least. Yeah. Supercars crammed into this car park, and it was so many spectacular machines from all around the country.
Made trying to reverse my Vauxhall Vivaro van very stressful, I'll tell you. In amongst that car park. But yeah, Supercar Sunday. This Sunday, as part of the British GT's Blue Ribbon event at Silverstone. And if you can't make it live over to Silverstone to see the action live, you can also watch it, Connor, live online.
You can, yes. Facebook Live will again be going for the British GT Championship, as it will for the whole day as well. So we'll also see action, obviously not just from the British GT, but also from British Formula 3, which will also be there, as well as the VW Racing Cup, and the Ginettas, I believe, will also be there, and the Mini Challenge as well will also be at the event. So fantastic event for a load of different cars. Obviously, Minis will be on the TOCA package next year, so anyone big fans of TOCA, great to go see those guys as well. VWs have have a couple ex-British touring car guys as well, so double reason for you guys to head on down. And of course, British F3 has the best young talent of this country coming through, and a fierce battle at the top of the championship between two Brits, Jonathan Hoggard and Clement Novalak, fighting for the championship this year. So everything to watch out for in those championships as well.
No offence, Clement, but I always forget that. Did you say he's British?
Yes, he does have he's British nationality. Although, yes, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that will point to.
I'm sure he was like French or something.
He was born in France, but he does have British nationality.
I'll let you off then. It's good to see. And also, who else was on the podium last time out? I'm just vaguely trying to scroll back through my memory. It's not working.
We have people like Ayrton Simmons, who will also be down there.
Hampus Eriksson, is he back?
Hampus Eriksson will be back, yes. So a couple of the F4 guys. The top four from British F4 last year are top three from British F4 last year are all through. So Hoggard, as I mentioned, Ayrton Simmons is there, and last year's champion Cian Jewis is also racing with Douglas Motorsport. So big names in the British scene, most certainly.
Very good. Check it all out. And F3, in the past few years, it's not usually been streamed live. Is it going to be live this weekend? Can we tune in?
Yes, the race 2 and 3 on the Sunday will be live on their YouTube channel, as will a lot of the support events like the Minis and the VWs and the Genettas will all be live on their respective Facebook pages as part of the Hey Fisher coverage that they're doing for British GT.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah, we will be definitely tuned in for that. So it's just about the end of the show, unfortunately, I think, because we've had a decent show. I believe, Connor, I would say.
Yes, it's been fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yes, despite the fact that we, unfortunately, we failed spectacularly to get Will Buxton on the show, but nevertheless, it was still a good show, and we managed to fill rather successfully for a good hour talking about Formula One and the fact that there's been no news, and we didn't even go really negative about the problems with Formula One and all the various things that it needs to do to become the thing that we think it should be, which is usually unattainable, a bit like Brexit.
No politics. But no, we always have to talk about the positives. There's no point being sad about things we can't change.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is literally sort of it, really, for tonight's show. Thank you very much for, as I say, sort of tuning in, everybody. And we will be back. I think we will be back next Monday. Actually, we might not be because I might have to have a bit of extra time off from our live stream that we're doing this weekend. It's a brand new championship being streamed live, hopefully by Motorsport Media, and it's a motocross event over in Whitby. So that's going to be going to see what happens there. Anyway, it's we'll tell you more on social media. But you're probably thinking, what the hell? I've not been involved in this championship before, but anyway, we're going to do our best to stream it all live. And if it works really well, if it's a success, we'll come back and tell you that it was a success the next time. But we don't want to, blow our own trumpet and then have it all have an incident like Will Buxton tonight, basically, where it just makes us look really stupid. Anyway, so that's why I'm keeping it on the down low. Anyway, so thank you very much, Liam, for coming on tonight's show. What will you? Did I ask you this earlier? But what will you be doing this weekend? I think I might have asked you earlier, but I forgot since then.
Yeah, it was a boring thing I'm doing this weekend anyway. I'm just working, really, and I'll be catching the Formula One race because I think I finished just in time as the race started, so I'll be catching up with that. Excellent. Don't make any predictions, please. No. Hamilton will win. Oh, God. You heard it here first. Bottas will win. So, Connor, you will be at Silverstone this weekend, so if anyone is going to pop out to the Silverstone 500, go and mind the Connor for a bit.
Yes, it's always a fun birthday weekend for me to go down to Silverstone, so always very fun.
Birthday?
Yes, on the Sunday it'll be my birthday. But yeah, we do that every year, so it's great.
Oh, wow. Congratulations on living another year.
How does it feel getting old?
How old are you, by the way?
I will be 22.
Oh my God, wow.
Anyway, moving on. Oh, God, yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, tuning in, bearing with us. Thank you very much to Nick Yellerly and to Vince Petit for organising Mr. Nick Yellerly as well, and to Rebecca Leppard as well. And, thank you. Download the audio version of this show for free and check out our website. Loads of fantastic articles on there from top journalists. And myself as well. Check it out, motorsport.radio, and it's all free forever. We will not ask you to pay a subscription. There'll be nothing to pay, not because it's not worth it, it is, but we just want you to go and visit our website, and we're not going to mind the year and ask you to pay, say, a few pounds a month. We could do, just like others do, but
okay, Lester.
Maybe not. Anyway. Thank you anyway for coming on tonight's show, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I'm just about to go and cough my guts up, and that'll be it, I think, for it on the show. Thank you, and yes, good night.